Welcome to Sore Subjects on 790 KRD. I am Tony Vanetti along with Dr. Paul and company here at Dynamic Healthcare. The number is 426-9200. If something clicks that we're talking about today, folks, or is not clicking in your body, you might want to give them a call and see if they can help you. Dr. Paul, this is the segment where we bring in one of your former or current patients that can talk about their experience. Who do we have?
Hey, it's David Sonnefeld. He's a patient that had some low back problem, hip problems. Go ahead, David. Tell us how you were.
Dave, tell us about your experience. What was going wrong with you before you went to Dynamic Healthcare?
Well, I was pretty much in a wheelchair where I could find one. I didn't have my own, but if I went shopping, like Walmart was my favorite place because they always had wheelchairs available, and I couldn't stand or sit for very easily at all. I was pretty much a cripple. I most of the time spent lying down on my bed because it was so painful, and the only way that I could live through the day was to take these narcotic painkillers, which weren't ideal, but that was the only thing that so I could even lie on the bed and not cringe in pain. So that was my state when I started.
What led you to Dr. Paul, and you had exhausted all of your other avenues? What did the doctors told you was wrong with you?
Well, I had 6 bulging, 2 herniated discs, torn cartilage in both hips, plus I guess it's called osteoarthritis. Is that like the arthritis of the joints? I think that's called
that's
osteoarthritis.
Correct, David, yeah.
I had that in my hips as well, so there was a lot of missing cartilage. And then both my ankles I had broken when I was younger, and one has plates and pins in it, so that was really destroyed. And the doctors used to say, well, it's it's a mess, and it's just going to get worse. In fact, the surgeon, when I remember now, just funny I'm thinking about that, but I remember the surgeon, who was a great surgeon, by the way, just did a great job because I had a trimallear fracture, so the first thing they had to do was move the ankle back into position because it was turning to the right, at right angles to the leg, And then he said, well, you're always going to have a problem, have limping, stiffness, you're going to walk with a limp, type of thing. And so that was how I started off.
What was your emotional state at this point? You just described yourself of having to take narcotics to lay in bed because everything else was so painful. You just mentioned about 10 injuries or 10 different parts of your body that you had problems with. What was your emotional state as you laid there in bed?
Wow, well, I had to fight with going into apathy all the time. I mean, it's not my style, to be apathetic. I don't have that as a sort of character trait particularly, but I had to fight myself pretty much, if not every day, every other day, just like to remind myself that, this is going to be temporary and I'm going to fix it, and somehow I'll get through this and I'm not going to live like this. Those sort of things that, go through your mind. And, when I look back, I was screwed. I had no hope. Everyone said you should just get surgery and handle a herniated disc, and you should, whatever, Well, most people didn't really know what to tell me. In fact, I found that there weren't really any solutions that, other than the doctors tell you, well, you'll be on painkillers, and it's going to get worse, and and I'm going, okay, well, that's really good to know. And I just sort of thought that because, just an inner voice kept telling me, like, no, I'm not going to go that way. There's got to be a way out of this mess, and I just kept that alive. And, and then I started treatment with actually decompression therapy that I started with. And immediately I was like, oh, God, there's hope. Gee. And immediately I felt this pressure and pain sort of start to subside. Now, you have to do more than one treatment because muscles have a memory, and you have to re-educate the muscles to change their memory because they're used to just cringing in pain from all the bad vibes that they get from all the herniated and bulging discs, right? And then, of course, then there's the hips. So I had these torn cartilage in both hips, and which I didn't find out till later. But the first sort of program was, do the decompression, and after a while, I actually could walk. Not 100%, but I could. I was like in the land of the living again. And then I had MRIs done of my hips, and then they said, "Oh, well, Paul looked at it and said, you've got torn cartilage in both hips." I said, "What?" I said, "Well, that's probably why I've been feeling so much pain." And
Man.
so that coupled with the fact that the two bulging and six bulging and two herniated discs didn't help either. It was just a mishmash of pain and trauma. I mean, it was really like peeling off an onion. You peel off one layer, and then you'd see, oh, now there's something else. And then you peel off another layer, and then there's something else. And, man, I mean, it was, I must admit that. I give myself a pat on the back, as Paul would totally acknowledge. I never gave up.
David never gave up, man. He would go for
I
it.
was relentless because I had a lot of life to live, and I was interested in living it. And although I'm 64, I felt like I've still got a long time to go, and I was very active when I was younger. I used to do, motocross and surfing and rugby and tennis and basketball, dirt biking all over the place, which really wrecks your body, by the way. But
all the landing and taking off part. But real quick,
landing and taking off. What about just the bumps?
Yeah. Look,
in those days, we used to wear what they call kidney belts, which was it's like a support thing that you would strap around your waist, and it would stop your kidneys from shaking all the time, or I guess it's bad. But that didn't work. I mean, motocross is.
Well, those bikes those bikes weighed a lot more then than they do now. I can tell you that now. Okay, so they were thousands of pounds then. But
also, suspension isn't as good either.
No, it's not. Dr. Paul, what he came to you, and what happened?
And then we did the decompression. Then we got into stem cells over a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, right, David? And then we started the therapy on you.
About a year and a half ago, I think it was.
Yes, and then we did your spine, and then we did your hips.
So you injected the stem cells in his hips where he had torn a cartilage, right?
Yeah, we did.
And then what happened after? What happens when you inject the stem cells?
It actually causes the cartilage to regrow and the area to regenerate. And this kind of blew me away. David had an MRI a couple months ago, and tell us what happened with that MRI, David.
What would the MRI look like, David?
Well, the MRI, it's funny because I was reading it, and I kept reading it again, and it doesn't say anything about this torn cartilage. Let me read it again. I probably missed something, right? Because, I was already thinking, and people were telling me, oh, you got to get hip replacements, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Have those foreign objects in my body? You got to be crazy. It's enough I've got plates and pins in my right ankle, which causes unbelievable havoc. So I showed it to Paul, and he said, yeah, there's no more torn cartilage. And that actually, truthfully, testing is a really good thing. In the medical profession, my hat's off to them because they have great testing. And it's a very needed thing when you're dealing with these types of injuries that you know before you go, like what the hell's going on. And these MRIs that I had, really showed, and it responded, well, it sort of paralleled the fact that I was not in a lot of pain anymore in the hip area, So it sort of there was a meeting of the minds there between testing and how I
Yeah,
felt.
from having a torn labrum on the first MRI and no longer a torn labrum on the follow-up MRIs. Really,
That's proof.
it's proof, yeah.
It's proof.
Yeah, those MRIs definitely woke me up. I went, okay, it works, you know?
All right, David, I'm so glad you're doing better. We're running up out of time here. We're up against the break. You have a very compelling story, and to tell you the truth, there are a lot of people that go to Dr. Paul that have the same story you do, and I'm glad that you found him.
Okay, well, thank you for asking me the question.
You got it. Thank you, David.
Take care, David. Thank
See you,
you.
buddy, man.
All right.
Boy, that's compelling. And that's proof stem cells work.
Oh, they work, yes.
And you injected him because he was going down the injuries, and I was like, what the heck? We're going to talk more about David here when we come back from the break. It's too fascinating, and it's a really great case study. But if you anything reminds you of you, won't you call 426-9200? 426-9200, and let's get in for an appointment at Dynamic Healthcare. This is Sore Subjects. I'm Tony Vanetti, your host, right here on 790 KRD.